I'm going to attempt to show you a few things. What we usually encounter with our old trucks when we find them. Can you all hear me okay? What we could convert them to modern tubeless counterparts. Kind of a progression of age of some of the other Alcoas and such, and then different types of wheels, terminologies, safety things, do's, don't do's, that kind of stuff. What I've brought is probably the most common selection that we all would encounter on medium or heavy duty trucks. And then we'll go for a little bit and we can do Q&A. Tex will have another presentation to record. So I'll stop at about 11, and then you can stay as long as you want and talk. So I'll start with the Alcoa stuff because it's right here. They started in 1948. That's a 54. So it's basically the exact same thing as original Alcoa. That's a 22. That was the first wheel, 22s. Those are 1100s. Those were the big tire back then. They carried the most weight. Those are 1000s on the back, which were the most common, 1000 22s. Later they developed 20s. And then later yet, like this is the next product. This is our early 60s. They came out about 62. Tubeless, 22.5. They're pretty cool. They still had the 5 holes, but the reason that they have ribs, and I'll just a little background. We got to tour the Alcoa facility. We're friends with the one engineer and the PR folks there. So we've learned some stuff for real that's not hearsay. Those were never designed as a drive wheel. Guys will say they would break. They're only a 7.5-inch wheel. They'd have problems. That wheel is only like a 4,900 pound capacity, thereabouts. They were designed for 10K steer axles on tankers in California and the West Coast. Lightweight truck trailers, steer axle application only. So, but they look cool and they can shine up, so guys will put them on the back of a truck and try to grow 70, 80, you're gonna have a problem. And now that they're old, you're really gonna have a problem. The ribs were left intentionally because they were afraid of the tubeless tire, but they were still biased at the time. They were not radials. So you had like a 10R 22.5, 11R, not R, sorry, 1000 22.5. They later decided they didn't need the ribs, and they learned they could take them out. But what if you've all seen a hydraulic hose machine crimp a hose fitting? Those are the swage marks from that die that forges it. They still have something like that on their new production, but they machine it out. So they chose to leave it. Then they went, this is a 22 10 hole. This would be anywhere from the early 70s or late 60s even on until they quit making them. And then here's a current, or actually an original tubeless Alcoa. You notice the small holes. This one here is from like the 80s, but it's almost a brand new wheel. They've since gone to larger holes again, or back to larger holes. Almost this big on a new one. That leads us to what we came up with, because there's some demand. That's a new wheel that we had made that we sell with the same hole bore, size, and direction, but in tubeless 22.5, 24.5. For guys that want a modern tubeless tires, but that look, they want that look. The new Alcoas, if you look at them, they started just very recently boring their holes in parallel with, or perpendicular to this face on an angle. It totally changes the look of the wheel. The hole now looks round and not teardropped. What they had a whole list of reasons why they did that. But anyway, so that's that. This is a standard lowboy tire and wheel, 15-inch tube type. This is an 8 1/4 15. We had these on our trailer in here last year. Millions of these things around. That is your tubeless drop center 17.5 that's going to replace that. And one thing that I bring up a lot is be careful with an old trailer before you just do that. If you stand these up, this 17.5 is about this much shorter of a tire than even the 8 1/4 15. The suspension on those trailers was mostly out of the tire. A lot of them were walking beam or even fixed. 8 1/4, a 900, a 1000 15, it's like a balloon. And that suspension is in that tire. So you put these on there, it might be easier and more trouble-free, but they ride like a log wagon. Then that might not make you happy. This one here is a Goodyear lock ring, single piece, Goodyear style. Probably the easiest, most recognizable one that we come across. It's a LW Goodyear. I've got kind of the little anatomy here. So the tube tires, if you just don't know, you have a liner that protects the tube from the wheel and the inner tube. And that's your parts. You can service it easy in the field, and it still works today. Forklifts, all kind of stuff uses multi-piece wheels yet now. I could jump ahead. By my son there on the floor is an Australian Trilex wheel, which is made to service in the bush. You could change that with a screwdriver and maybe a hammer if you needed to really persuade it. So on a tube type that does not have a drop center, you know, you take the ring off and then you can slide the tube and the tire right down onto the wheel. On that one, you put the tube in the tire and you just put the segments in there and they just sort of fit together. There's no locking together, there's no snapping, and then you air it up. But it goes on a spoke hub similar to a Dayton, but it has to be 8 or 12 spoke because it has to be divisible by, a 6 or 12 spoke, divisible by the 3 segments, and you have to put the segment on the spoke. It's a different hub than a Dayton. It's got a different shape to it. This is a regular old 8 1/4 20 that we see on all these medium duty trucks, farm trucks. A lot of us drag home. They're super cheap, plentiful. Probably the most common issue that guys see or encounter is they want tubeless wheels on their Dayton, if it was a Dayton like most of them are. So they go and they buy a set off of who knows what at a junkyard, and they're usually a 8 1/4 22.5 wheel. You put that on the truck, it doesn't work. It hits the brake chamber, it hits the tie rod ends, every time. Then people get discouraged. This is a 7.5 by 22.5, and then there's also a 6 3/4 by 22.5. Super common on a school bus. That's what you need to replace the 8 1/4. And then this is a 9R 22.5. So this tire is the exact same size as this tire. But with that tire and wheel, you can jump from the tube type. You can still buy them. They're kind of tricky to find. If you guys look at this wheel later, I've kind of laid out some stuff. The width is always measured between the beads. That's kind of a, guys will measure them and think they have an 8-inch wheel. It's a 6.5, you know. And then I've labeled the drop center or the mounting well. And that difference is to get the tubeless tire pried on there, right? Because you can't slide it over. There's no edge to take off. And then this one's just for curiosity. That's a 750/20. And it is a Goodyear wheel. Still has a lock ring, but also a split. And you only see that on the light ones, lighter, heavy ones. Once you take the ring off, you just kind of knock that and it'll bypass, and now you have even more space to work. Tire comes off easier. Many, many variations of that style. You see them a lot on KB, like International. It's kind of the medium, heavy stuff. You see tons of those. And then everybody's favorite folklore, Widowmaker, split rim, right? This is a Firestone RH5 This one is made by Motor Wheel, and I've listed all the different people that I could find that have made this wheel. This one's only a 4 3/4 inch wheel, and it had like a 750 or a 650/20, like the one behind me. And none of these other wheels are split rims. That's the biggest part to understand. That's what everybody wants to call these multi-piece wheels. But this is a split rim. These are the ones that are illegal, even though, you know, where do you find that? But nobody will work on these. Almost no one will work on a lock ring wheel anymore either. You got to go to a farm tire shop, a ag shop, a forklift shop, somebody that's used to it. A brand new earth moving machine has lock rings, so those guys know what to do with it. But the way this worked was simply, you just put this on like a tire. I mean, there's a little notch, but you just hammer it down on there. You're relying on this ring, this groove. And this one's really nice, but it's still pretty rusty. And there's nothing.
The only way to do that properly is to clean them.
Clean it well.
Like,
yeah.
An hour on each string.
But this.
So you got your grip.
But that little lip is just eroded most of the way around here when you come and look at it. It's got a pretty good point on this half. This half is almost flat.
That'll be in your face.
And the reason that that didn't work is that that's the only thing holds it together. And those were also only on the light, medium duty trucks. You'll never find that on a heavy truck. When you look at this one, if you really look at it, when the ring is not what's holding, the groove is not what's holding the ring on. When the tire airs up, it slips up past that lip and girdles the ring and actually shrinks it back down, tightening it to the wheel. So you're not relying just on the mechanical part. The tire is now the snap ring, basically. And that's lubing up the tube type tires is huge. People forget that, or they don't think it's necessary. It's not tubeless. Why would I lube it? I think I put more lube on these than I do a tubeless, just to make sure it comes up on there. And you can watch that ring gap. If it's not happy, you'll know at about 30 pounds of air, like pretty soon. So you can have a cage, you can do the chain, the forklift, counterweight, a welding table. I've done all that stuff. Have it away from you. But at about 20 to 30 pounds, I look at it, and if it didn't start to go in, I know we stop and we start over, or we take a rubber mallet and whack it, and usually it'll just go right in, usually. Then you can go on up with the rest of your air from there. The three-piece rings, or I'm sorry, two-piece lock rings, which I guess I actually forgot to bring. Those are safer yet. So you have an outer, that's a Firestone ring, not a Goodyear ring. So the outer band is continuous and the inner band is split. The inner band though is about so wide, and those are really bad about rusting to the wheel. No, I did, it's this one right here. Rusting or corroding to the wheel. These are awful bad sometimes. But they're really safe, like really, really safe. I feel like I would see these on the newest versions more often just because they became safer. So you can see that's probably 2 inches wide. These are not interchangeable with the other Goodyears, and it's not the same wheel. When you order the wheel, right in the part number, it'll say Goodyear or LW or Firestone or 5 degree. There's a machined lip out of that for this ring. But you can see the gap there. And once this, you smush the tire down, put that one on, and then this one slides up, and now the tire girdles the ring, and this ring girdles that ring. So it's really, really secure. And when they're old and full of water and rusty and corroded, I've used everything from forklifts to porta powers to get them apart, and sometimes they don't come apart. Can you all hear me okay still? We're good on time. I feel like I'm racing through, I don't know. These little guys down here are 16.5 truck wheel, like a 3/4 ton truck wheel, and a 16-inch truck wheel. One's tubeless, one's tube type. It doesn't matter. The point was to show you any of our truck wheels that end in 0.5 do not have a locking bead. And I've illustrated that just with a marker. The bead flange is sloped up and it's smooth, and when they run low on air, they come off. All the big truck wheels now are that way. 22.5s, 24.5s, 17.5s. You won't find a locking bead in any of those. The 16, though, even that tube type 16 has a locking bead bump. So 15-inch car tires, 16s, ATV tires, they have even more pronounced bump. It really keeps them on when they get low. That would be a really tough tire to change because you got locking beads on a tube type. It has a drop center to give you some room, but it's still a tube type. Moving on down, this one, I don't know why I brought it. It's the same as these. It's a 22-inch Goodyear style tube type. These are kind of we're getting a little bigger and newer. A Low Pro 24.5 and an 11R 24.5. Not quite sure why the Low Pro even exists. Low Pro 24.5 is the same height as an 11R 22.5, like on our truck right there. But I guess if you need to lower your bigger truck, you got the wheels already, whatever. A 11R 24.5, if we're talking about correlations again, that's what replaces these 1022s. So I kind of jumped around a little there, but you got an old truck from the 70s or 50s, 60s, 70s that has 1022s, you're gonna want 11R 24.5s to keep the diameter and the circumference the same. And that look, you know, you got the big look to it. Weight capacity falls in there too, but not usually for a hobby truck. And I skipped my first stack by accident down there that's up against the truck. So I'll move back down there. Once we get into bigger medium duty and heavy duty trucks, the 1020, 920, that's probably gonna be our most common fitment, especially in the Midwest where I'm from, Ohio. Some of you guys are from California and stuff. You might say the 22s are more common, but anywhere east of the Rockies, it's like the 20s. So a 1020 is gonna be replaced by your 11R 22.5. You're almost always an inch wider on a radial to get the same overall diameter and all that. This one is kind of a weird oddball because this came off of medium duty, and I earlier told you that sometimes the full width wheels don't work. This is an in-between width wheel. You can kind of see this tire is just a little wide for that wheel, but they were able to get them to fit on that with a 7-inch wheel, which is sort of a funny size. They were able to fit the 900s on there. And then there's another band and an aluminum Dayton hub. That's kind of cool. This off of International Emeryville or Transtar from the late 60s, early 70s. There's another one in a display down there in the back of the Perkle truck. It was also off of International, and I think that they probably were one of the bigger buyers or users of those. I've never really seen one on much else but that. Just a nice lightweight option. Nice trophy, I guess. One thing I didn't bring last year that's a huge topic is all of our different bud, especially bud wheel nuts, or what you call stud pilot. So I'll explain those in a minute, but this is a really neat little piece. This is a Webb, or it's a Webb brand, but Dayton single wheel wedge. So that has a regular wedge on it. This one here, without any spacer bands or anything, you can run a single wheel. Now you might need a different or a custom offset wheel, because that's gonna put you all the way in or all the way out. It's not gonna be what you want. There's a company here, just over here before the ATHS store, called Wheels Now. And they actually sponsored my presentation last year, but we're in their neighborhood now. So they're here with their own booth. They will make any wheel that you need in like days, okay? One of the steel wheels. One of the biggest things that comes up, like when we brought our lowboy to York last year, I found out at the last minute that my 15-inch wheels, like this one, were rusted beyond use. They weren't safe. Some of them had holes in them. In like 7 days, I had a brand new pallet of 15-inch tube-type wheels at my door. And so we toured their shop, and not expensive either. We toured their shop on the way here. They're over in Waukesha. They have pallets of shells of rims, okay? And pallets of lock rings. But then like on the Dayton, if you've never really noticed, this flange is welded in here for the Dayton. That's not part of that shell. So I got the guy to really tell me how this could all happen so fast and how their inventory is so small. Their warehouse is only like a third of this building. And he said, well, it's simple. We just weld the parts together. I'm like, well, what parts did you put together? I mean, the 15 doesn't have any welding. It's a rim and a lock ring. But so when you come to a single, if that's something that you want, they literally will weld that Dayton flange in that shell wherever you want it. And it's, again, not expensive, and it's fast. It's like all these mythical things that people say we can't do or is obsolete, like you can get it done. Brake linings, clutch refacing, like all this stuff. There's somebody somewhere that will do it. Very rarely is it an absolute no. It's just you got to find the place. So that's what I've kind of dedicated my time to, finding all those vendors and information. And before I get to explaining those, a resource like this Euclid wheel stud calendar flyer book is huge. You find a heavy truck shop parts vendor that does relining and selling of this stuff, and a guy that knows how to have the books versus the computer, and that they have the books on the rack. That's our place. We need that guy, that place. If they're gonna throw out the books, tell them you want them. Just get the books. That Napa book is only from '98, and there's stuff in there that they no longer make. And between the Euclid and the Napa, I have been able to get everything I needed. You notice on the back of this truck, there's some studs missing on the tag axle. Well, that's this right here. I was able to find the obsolete studs, but later after my truck was put together. So this is life size. You just go to what you think you need, measure it, measure the diameters and stuff, and start laying it on the different ones until you find the one that it is. Thank you. Down, like this page that fell out, down to the knurling. I mean, this is such a great resource, and being life-size, you can't really screw it up. Euclid is owned by Meritor, by the way. So like as in Rockwell, Meritor. I mean, that's the industry leader in axles and components right now. So they're a huge resource. This is a regular hub pilot, modern stud and lug nut. Just for reference, this is what's on that truck with the flange nut, okay? We pretty much all know what those are. This one here with the small hole, this is a front lighter medium duty bud nut that's the same size nut, but with only a 3/4 stud. You'll see those on some of like the medium duty stuff. And then this is our standard nut. Left and right hand thread. One thing that, so this would be like a steel to steel, steel to aluminum, heavy steel to aluminum. And then you get into these guys here. This would be aluminum to aluminum. So the longest version. Now, one thing that happens a lot, we encounter guys say, my studs are too short, I can't run inner aluminums on my old truck. Well, that would seem that way, except for you need this lug nut right here. This has the snout. Some guys down south, I hear them call these spools. I've heard them called different things, thimbles, whatever. I call them lug nuts. It's got this snout that goes into the inner wheel and onto the threads you thought were too short. All of these up here but one are regular nuts. I would really encourage you to only ever buy the heavy duties. I have a 5-gallon bucket of lefts and rights, and I never throw them out because there are times you need to dig in that bucket and get one to put something together. But all of these are the regular duty, and if you come and look at them, the threads start, just pass them around. The threads start way up inside the nut. Only this one that I brought right here, this is a heavy duty steel to steel. So it has a bit of a snout, which you could only use if you had the heavy service, thicker steel wheels, and it locates it a little. But the biggest thing I want you to know, every part number of these nuts, you can order a heavy duty version, and the threads go all the way to the end. That's the biggest part right there. I don't care what just get the heavy duty ones, get all the threads, especially on that aluminum to aluminum, because now your studs are never too short. I really don't think there's such a thing. Pass that one around, please. And they don't cost but like 50 more cents, and they usually have to order them because they don't stock them, blah, 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 but whatever, get those. This truck over here that they're looking at has the trucker tag axle and the V-belt drive. I have to run the extra long ones on that. That V-belt pulley is 1 inch thick, but you could not run aluminum wheels on that truck. By the time you put that V-belt spacer in there, there's not a longer lug nut that you can buy to get that to have an aluminum wheel. So there is that. Huh?
Have you ever made them?
Nope, I've never made them. I think obviously it wouldn't be terribly hard, but you'd have to be able to machine the inside and outside, and that's way beyond my. Huh?
You'd make a longer studs.
Well, no, because the thickness comes from you're losing it all in that 1 inch thick pulley. You'd have to have a longer inner nut. Maybe a longer stud and an inner nut, I don't know. But anyway, let's see here, time-wise. I think I took way more time last year. I don't know what I wasted it on, but do we want to do Q&A now? I mean, is there something you want me to say or talk about that I maybe have raced through or skipped or question?
That book you had with the studs,
Yeah.
where does somebody find something like that? Just luck off
No.
the interweb?
No. So typically the big truck shops are going to be in the biggest city in your state,
Yeah.
or the city that has the most trucking, or like in my case, it's an hour, it's in Columbus, Ohio. But they're all on the south end of Columbus because that's where all of our terminals and things are.
Yeah.
So call around. Look them up on the internet, but then go in there, talk to them, see what, you can see pretty quick like if it's your place or not. If they have racks of books, just ask them for an old one. That's all I did. I just asked them for the old, if they had one.
Like, on the back of mine, I have 4 studs. They're actually like passenger car wheel studs.
Oh yeah.
And the drive shaft comes into that.
Oh,
One of them was bent, and I took it out, and I must have gone to maybe 18 different, O'Reillys and Napas and so forth. And nobody says, well, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And you don't have to make your own.
Yeah, no. A heavy truck shop works different. So this is a Napa book, but it's really all, I forget what the line is that makes it. So, and I've done these seminars on restorations too, and I chose not to do it this year, but like just for instance, water pumps. We're talking, I mean, they've got big cam, clearback, small cam water pumps in here. You get a number off your water pump or your stud or a measurement, and you come in here, it doesn't matter if this is obsolete, because at least now you got a part number from their system. You can start calling around, you can look online. You can find a rebuild kit maybe. This thing even breaks down and has the kits right in it. So they have a book just like this for, it's called Napa Heavy Truck Wheel Attaching Hardware. And it's about a third of this thick, and it's everything that little thing is and more, because that's just studs. There's ones for nuts, there's ones for the wedges and clamps, there's one for spindle nuts and the lock washers, you know, that go between the double nuts. You get those old books.
Master cylinders work for that too?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's actually in this one. You can look through this one. Take pictures of this stuff. Yeah, vacuum hydraulic products. It's got clutches. That's all. I mean, you can't buy this book anymore though. And at 98, that seems relatively new. Oh, I'm sorry, 03. This one's 03. Seems kind of new, but it's obsolete. What else? You guys gotta have questions.
What's the logic between 24.5s and 22.5s not having a locking key with the wheel?
I think it's you physically would not be able to change that tire, because a 15 or 16 inch truck tire like that will really fight you. I mean, you have to beat and pry. Yeah, I mean, you got the pneumatic tire machines now for cars, but I've seen them not be able to push the bead off of a wheel because it just smears the tire down. It's rusted on there a little bit, but you're talking about a guy has to change these on the side of the road. You take that bead out of there, and now you let the air out and it just falls off. Usually, you know, you might jump on it or whack it once. Sometimes when you flip it over and it falls on the ground, it just comes off the bead. It doesn't come off the wheel. The only time skid steers, worst thing in the world for a 16.5. Almost all skid loaders are on a 16.5. They don't have that bead, but those tires are really thick and they're really heavy. I don't think they could have that locking bead. I don't think you could get it off. But the application of that machine that twists and turns, as soon as they run low, they fall off. And I mean like 40 pounds that they'll fall off. But they run at 65, 70 PSI, and if they're not up there, they'll just pry right up. I did mention about the lube on a tube tire, so also talc the tube. That's part of the process that people forgot. Baby talc, talcum powder. Some of the new tubes I won't talc because they come out of the bag and they kind of have like a little layer of talc on them already. You know, you can puff them up, get them shaped up, and then they're slippery in there, and you can feel that. But if they're not, they'll stick in that tire and they're all deformed. They don't really mount up well. They're not safe. I did bring a few tools down here I skipped. Let's look at these real quick. Some other stuff we forgot about over the years. This is a brand new Ken Tool tire stretcher, bead stretcher, that I use all the time. Because you get these tires and they're barrel stacked on a skid, zip tied down, the beads are about that far apart. And we have to get that, the tube is easy. The liner, it kills my fingers. Stuffing that all down in there. So this works just like a high lift jack in reverse. You can still buy this right out of the Napa book or whoever sell Ken Tools. It's super handy. Stretch it out, clean it out, you know, you got some room to work in there. It's like a turn signal fluid. People say a tire stretcher. Well, everybody used to know what that was. Some other curiosities too that are kind of, these are Ken Tools, these are leather. They come in a 3-piece set. They're actually formed really nice and tight to the bead when you get them. But after a while, all your lube and your spoons breaks them down. You can soak them in water and get them soft and mold them again. These are critical when we're restoring trucks that have wheels that look like that. You think I'm wrapping a chain around that and using a tire iron? No. If it was a tubeless wheel and not a two-piece, I would be using these on it, especially the aluminum wheels. This is another one. These come from OTC. They're always a three-piece set. I killed one of them. There's only two left. These work really well too, really, really well. But if you have a fighter, you will destroy these. These snap on the edge of the rim, and then you have the cord hanging out. And once you go to the next spoon, you just rip it out of there and keep working your way around. And then theoretically, three of them will do the job. Sometimes you gotta slide it around and get another bite. But these work really well. But you'll see they're torn up. They won't take the abuse that those will.
So that's when you're mounting the tire?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could, I guess. You can't use these to dismount, but you can use these. The way they fit, they just won't work for a dismount. All that stuff had come from Napa. It's easy to get. Now, if we go to hub pilots, these two things here are made by True Balance. And hub pilots now don't use the tapered seat of the lug nut to center the wheel. They pilot on the hub diameter. And we all know that if you mess with them, they can get rusted up on there pretty bad and everything. But there's still some scientific or engineering proof to say that once that's on that hub, it can still turn this way because the stud hole is smaller than the stud. It centers on the hub, but then these are tapered guides that are very thin and machined to the bore of the wheel. You put these three on there, slide the wheel on, and then tighten it. Now it's centered. It can't index like this. So it eliminates some of the radial run out or the hop going down the road. You guys need these. They run a bunch of van trailers, and I know he's always messing with the tires and wheels.
I see them in plastic too. Do you leave the plastic ones on?
I don't know, but right in this little box is the metal ones that you leave in. This one's, the reason I have these left is these are too thick. There's two thicknesses, and I don't exactly know why. I forget why. It's been years since I bought this, but the thinner ones that would be this thickness were left in that truck, and they're, I assume, still in there. It only takes three. Little side note though, these are super handy for putting on wheels on a truck that you have just painted the hub up on and don't want to scratch it all up. Because now you have alignment dials just like on a transmission. You get a little bit up on there and it'll just whoosh, and it never touches anything. So I use them for that sometimes just because I don't want to scratch it. But again, that's a hub pilot, like something new like that, newer. What, mid 80s, they probably came out, mid to late 80s. What else, any more questions?
These look just like my wheels. You can find them to fit this vintage?
Well, these won't work on there because the lug nut is centering it. The tapered lug nut.
Okay.
I don't own it anymore, but see how these are riveted? This one's riveted, yeah. That's a tube type. There are some wheels out there that are tubeless. They're early steel tubeless from the 60s. They're usually on the West Coast that have what looks like a rivet and they're tubeless. They're really cool. Firestone made them. They have a drop center. I do have some sales literature for those wheels. They actually never penetrate the shell of the wheel. It's a hot weld, spot weld kind of technology, but to keep it from spinning or whatever, the spot weld also punched it into the wheel, creating like a pocket, but it never penetrated. So those wheels would hold air because you can't have a tubeless with rivets. I mean, it wouldn't work. So there's some stuff out there that you really got to pay attention. The Widowmaker, I think, is one that the reason some people get hurt is it looks like a tubeless wheel to look at it. You look at this side, there's no lock ring. Flip it over, no lock ring. when it's put together, it kind of looks like it has a drop center, but it's tube type. These are like old Model A Ford, and then somebody told me Model B is the other one. They are tube type, but they have a drop center and no lock ring. So all this lock ring stuff only applies to 3/4 ton trucks and up, basically. Because any car tire is so pliable, it's like a bicycle. You almost don't even need tools to put them on. You sort of just weasel it over the side of the wheel. And you needed the drop center to get, some room to do that. Yeah, I think I need more questions. That's what I need. What do you got?
So are bias ply tires now widely available, or at least there's a couple vendors? Or?
Yeah, great question. I skipped my tire guy. You need at least 2 to 3 good tire guys. And the answer is they're not widely available. They are available. The worst answer, though, is almost all of them are made overseas. Very few bias tires are made here. What got me into the whole mess with these wheels right here is I have 2 of these West Coasters. They came with 22s. You cannot buy this tire anywhere. The 10 or 1100 22 does not exist. I finally got a roundabout way to Specialty Tires of America in Pennsylvania, and they said, we haven't made them in 20 years, we're not interested. I wouldn't leave them alone, and finally they said, okay, fine, if you can get 100, we'll consider it. Well, it only takes 10 of you guys to want to put 10 tires on their truck, and I had 2 of the trucks, so I only needed 8 guys. In like a week, I compiled a list, put it out on Facebook through the ATHS page, and I had names and phone numbers. And I called them, and they were like, oh, shoot. Well, they thought they were going to get rid of me. Okay, so we're on the 4th batch of 100 22-inch tires. I make nothing off of this. They won't let me be a dealer. They're not interested. I go through this guy in Phoenix, Arizona that sells a bunch of military tires, and military still is running some 20s and 22s on old trailers. He was able to get the ownership to say, okay, fine, we'll try it out. And like I say, 4th batch or so of 22s. Before we came here, there was 25 left in the system. Oh, sir, they're made in America. That's the point of that whole thing. But they're not free. They're like $650 a piece with a tube and a flap. That was like an $80 tire 50 years ago. 20 years ago when they quit making them, they were maybe $250, but we can get them. And they cost about what a premium radial drive tire costs for a big truck anyway. So if you're comparing, oh, I want new radials or I want these, it's really not a cost thing unless you start talking China tires. But there's some are made in India, there's Vietnam. I still try to avoid the China tires. I have not had good luck with anything rubber from there. It seems to really degrade pretty badly. But yeah, they don't seem quite right, but you can buy them pretty cheap. Your tire guy will say, well, what do you gotta find a guy that will work with you, that understands what we're trying to do. Is this a hobby truck you're gonna go get ice cream with like once a week? Are you gonna haul a load with it too and haul your tractors with it? Because now we're starting to talk about you're actually using the thing, and maybe you should have some better rubber on there. Yeah.
For 24-inch tube type
Yep.
Kumo used to make them. Is that still available?
Last I knew, Sumitomo was making a radial 22 and 24. If you want my guy's number from Phoenix, I'll give it to you afterwards.
The bias plant?
I don't know about that, actually.
It's 30 years ago. I
Right.
could only get them from Kumo.
Yeah. Kumo makes a lot of radials now, so I'm guessing that's probably where they focus. Most of the bias are going to come from old names like you would recognize from before, like Power King, names like that, old names. It's not going to come from Goodyear, Firestone, anything like that. And then there's a lot of names you don't recognize, like Linglong and Power Track. Well, most of them are just a China copy of our tire because they have our molds because we don't use them anymore. And they still run stuff like that. The 20s, the 900 and 1020s, like that one down there, those are really easy to get. The 8 1/4s are kind of easy. The 750 20s start getting hard. But then once you get down into the little stuff, like on the wooden brass era trucks, that's really available because Specialty Tires makes a lot of car restoration tires. And there's enough of that old stuff that it starts to become easier again. And it is sort of spendy, but it's out there. Part of my discussion that I did skip is when you're deciding what you want, the tube type looks original. So if you really, like I drive this to 4 car shows a year that are local. If we drive far, I'm hauling it. But I wanted it to be original, so that's what I got. You can't replace this look. There's a few out there, so if you look at the drive tires on that, I found a new radial that kind of has an old school bias look. So if you want, you can play with that and get a little of that look back. So you got those kind of tires on this kind of wheel. No one would really know but you. But if you go full on modern on a truck like this, you put 24/5 Alcoas on here, you're gonna know that doesn't go on there. So it depends on what you're gonna do with it and the look you want, I guess. Yes.
I got a gooseneck trailer, probably 12,000-pound axles,
Yeah.
16-inch tube type tires.
Yeah.
Bought the trailer. It's Yokohama's, really good quality, but they're tube type, and they're blowing the valve stem out the hole where. And then one tire guy said, "Well, you got to have these little plastic collars," but very few tire people know that.
Yeah.
And I just had a repair on the road, and I got the tire pumped up, ready to go, and he didn't put the collar in. It's like, what the hell? How common is that?
That's pretty common. A lot of the truck tubes, well, do they have a liner in them or not? A flap?
No, there's no flap.
The flap, well, the flap is extra thick in that area. Do they have a lock ring on them? Or are they a single piece wheel?
It's a single piece.
Yeah, I don't know if you can have a liner in a single piece wheel because it would have a drop center. But also there's other tubes that have the bolt-in valve stems, right? So there's a brass nut and a metal plate. That's probably the tube that you need, I would bet. Because you put that in there, insert it, screw the nut on there, and then the metal plate also has like a dimple to it that sort of puts it up into that hole, and that's more of an ag type of tube, but there's certain wheels that has to be in. And when you look at how long the slots are on these, they don't have that, but they just have a really thick spot in the liner, like really thick.
Well, these tube types are just a hole with no slots.
Right.
And
Yeah, that needs a bolt in.
it needs
A bolt in.
A bolt in is better.
Yep, has to be. I would say that has to be a bolt in tube.
It's bolted. The stem is bolted in the tube.
The stem is threaded.
A little bigger around. Oh.
Yeah, the stem is threaded, and it has a brass nut on it.
Okay. Could I patch that onto an existing tube? Because I bought patches on stems.
No.
You got to buy the tube.
Yeah, I mean theoretically that was a thing at one time. Yeah, but I wouldn't. No, I don't think I would do that. Oh, sir. Yeah.
See that type of setup.
What I thought you were going to ask me though, like the guys at Wheels Now, they'll make you a brand new set of 16s or 17.5s, tubeless wheels that just bolt right on there. Now I know that's a lot more money than 8 new tubes or whatever, 4 new tubes, but it's a thing. One of the biggest upgrades to a gooseneck is to go to the 17.5s right there, like is on a standard semi-trailer on single wheels. That's a pretty common thing with skid steer trailers and whatnot.
These are duals.
They're duals. There's commercially made wheels already for that conversion.
It's just I put maybe 200 miles a year on it.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, I would get some cheap tubes. You probably have $100 in 8 tubes. I don't know, 12, 15 bucks, 20 bucks a piece.
A lot of tires and tubes.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So are you making aluminum wheels?
I do not make that at my own shop, but I have that made. It's our part number. The guy that makes it for me is in Marion, Ohio, right up the road from us. They're a huge wheel vendor. did have to unfortunately be made overseas. I tried and tried and tried. He said, no, there's not one American wheel maker that will make an aluminum wheel custom for you in the US. But he assured me that it's the highest quality, and it really is. It's mirror both sides. And so what normally guys do if they want that is they go buy a wheel. Alcoa for a short time made a single hole aluminum wheel. They were used on like log trailers and some other stuff out west. Take it to a machine shop, have them mill that out. Well, that costs money, and then you gotta tell the machine shop that it's gonna be safe, and if they don't wanna do it, they'll tell you no because it's a wheel. And then there's like, you're literally reinventing the wheel at that point. So the cost of that wheel, new, no, it's not a domestic wheel, again, unfortunately, but it costs less to buy that wheel than it does to take one and play with it. And it's easy because you don't have to do anything. But we don't make that ourselves. It's way.
Made like Alcoa repos for a tube type wheel.
Not for a tube type, no. It has to be, there's a sign up under my front tire that explains this whole story. There's 4 part numbers for that wheel. 22.5 hub and bud, 24.5 hub, pilot, and bud. That's it, those 4. And they're all 8 1/4 wide for modern tires, like an 11R. If you wanted a vintage wheel, we are scrounging and collecting all the time 22s, 5 holes. If any of you have any you want to sell, great. I don't want 5 hole, or I do not want 10 hole 22s. They're a dime a dozen. People, I mean, they're all over the place. That's what that middle wheel is down there. But because I scrounge up the 5 holes, I have a set right now that I own, I haven't even picked up yet. I can help guys put sets on trucks because we can get the tire and the wheel. And there was a really pretty orange Kenworth last year that came to York, and he's got 10 of our wheels we had refurbished and 10 of these tires on it. And it's like a concourse quality, really expensive truck. And that was all it needed to be a correct, was the wheels and tires. So we just gotta find good ones and fix them up. If that means welding something and like sanding it back down, we will do that because you can't get another one easily. We've got about 5 minutes. Anybody have anything else?
On the split rim, they talk about where the valve stem is.
Yep.
And the split
Yep.
on this to put them in opposite
Yep.
sides of each other.
I'd like to do that. All of mine are that way. Part of the reason I do that, actually, so there's a balancing aspect because there's metal missing from both places, right? So it kind of equals out the balancing. The reason I do that, though, is when I have it in a cage, or up against something heavy, like this, you're pulling the chuck this way, and actually I demonstrated that wrong. I would have the valve stem up, okay? Valve stem up, I'm pulling the air chuck. I can peek around from a safe distance and see the split in the ring if it's opposite the valve stem. Otherwise, I feel like I'm right there on it and it's hard to see. That's just my preference, but it gives me a visual that I can look. That ring should usually be about 0 to 3/8 inch gap. And I had an old time tire buster tell me that. If you ever have more than a 3/8 inch gap, you got the wrong ring on that wheel. And he is right, because I have measured about every one I've ever done. 0 to 3/8 inch. And I've seen some documents that had dimensions printed for the various lock rings. That kind of stuff is all long forgotten. You can't buy it anymore. You have to find it online or scan it or find it in a library or something. The ATHS library has some stuff like that in it that you can print or scan, but you can't take it home. Yep. The questions are good because it helps me remember the stuff I want to talk about that I forget.
There's some little makers that the center twist together.
Oh, yeah.
They're still on the truck.
We're still on it? So I thought...
I'd never, if I ever had a tear, deal with it, I'd just throw them off to the side.
I thought that's what that one was. last year I brought that here and it was on a tire. And when I went home, I said, I gotta get this thing apart so I can display it. There are 2 little dimples in there, and the 2 little dimples, and there's a little notch. I thought it was the kind you hammered it around and it unscrewed like that. I don't even know what the dimples are for because that one just pries off. So I think that variations depend on who made it, because like I said, there's Firestone, Bud, K&H, Motor Wheel, and maybe others that made that wheel.
You know, his truck's got just a combination, you know, those, and then the offsets are different. I
Yeah.
looked in the duals, and the one's got this much gap, the other one's got that much gap. It's like,
So those are also always a Bud type wheel like that. They're never a Dayton because they can't be. There's like nothing to hold it together. Wheels now I'm pretty sure they brought one and they make them all the time. You can remake that in a 20-inch or a 22.5 if you really want to run like a low pro 22.5, or like this one. They make that wheel and they sell them all the time. And one of the biggest people they sell them to is the C50, C60 Chevy guys. Those had like a 10 lug wheel that only used 5 on the front, 10 on the back. Little tiny 10 lugs.
a little dinky.
Yeah, they sell the heck out of those because people go buy an old grain truck for $500, $1,500, bring it home, fix the master cylinder, and then they find out they got these wheels on it. And nobody will touch it. So now they've got all of a sudden like this $3,000, $4,000 project. Usually you abandon the project, or you can find somebody like them and they ship you those wheels, and they look nice.
So you're saying they'll still make that, what I would call the real split rim?
They make it as a 20-inch with a single lock ring.
Oh, it does have a lock.
A single lock ring, just like, just like the ones on the front of the truck. So a narrow 20-inch or a 22.5 tubeless. But you can do a big 5 or the big 6 or the Chevy small 10. It doesn't matter what it is. They make that part there. So it just gets you away from the split Widowmaker. It's actually called a Firestone RH5. That's what it's called. It's written right on there. If it's an RH5, that's the bad one. They love their 5-degree number too. These 2-piece Firestone rings on this Alcoa down here, that's called a Firestone 5-degree ring. It's labeled right on it. It's their angle of their bead geometry is what that is.
Something like the Studebaker used to use.
There was a guy last year at convention had like a whole row of Studebakers, and he was just standing here, and I helped him get together with Wheels Now to get him new 20-inch wheels. And he is working on it, and he's going to keep the 20-inch bias tires and wheels so that it doesn't completely lose its originality. Because he doesn't drive these things around; they're collector's thing. So, Tex, I think we're good on time. If you want to call it, I'll stand here and talk to them if they want.
Say that's right.
All right, cool.